about, well, the Muslim community. Many of them are speaking out this morning against terrorism, and they're also asking for greater understanding. We have two people who are joining us live in studio right now, freelance journalist Nidia Khan and Abdul Mubarak Rowe from the Council on American Islamic Relations. Thank you so much for joining us here live this morning in studio.
Thank you for having us.
And I think you can feel the tenor of what's happening. There seems to be this groundswell and movement of Islamophobia here in America, once again rearing its ugly head post 9/11. How would you two like to address it with us this morning?
Well, it's actually interesting. Just this week, the FBI released stats on hate crimes, and while they've gone down overall, they've actually gone up against the Muslim community. And I think we have to be really cognizant about how we shape these stories, about how we should be more careful about not putting all Muslims under the umbrella of terrorism. You got to remember, it's like 1.6 billion people around the world, and groups like ISIS and other terrorist groups are a tiny, tiny fraction of 1% of that. And unfortunately, Muslims, regular Muslims like Abdul and I, and a lot of other Muslims just don't get an opportunity to show our perspective, to show what true Islam is, and you have these other people who've hijacked the religion.
Okay, so let's talk about it. You talk about these extremists who have hijacked the religion. So set the record straight on how they've hijacked it and how you want other Americans who are watching today to perceive it.
Well, thank you for having me. And I would respond to that by saying that it's important that Muslims speak out with respect to explaining to the public exactly what al-Islam is and what it isn't. Just yesterday, we had a press conference, a group of Muslim leaders and community members and activists in New Jersey, right, which your station was present at, decrying and denouncing the terrorist acts that are committed by people like ISIS, because ISIS, despite what they say to the contrary, they do not represent al-Islam in no shape, way, form, or fashion. And that has to be stated over and over and over again. But I would also like to caution the fact that the tenor of Islamophobia has been given a lot of height and rhetoric due to the pronouncement by some who are aspiring for political office as well.
Well, let's talk about your reaction to Governor Chris Christie. I think that's what you're alluding to. Are you alluding to the fact that he is talking about what is going on with Syria and saying close the border to Syrian refugees?
In part, yes, and I find that to be very unfortunate, because these are refugees. And also bear in mind the fact that America has a far more stricter vetting process with respect to receiving refugees than the other European nations are, because most of the refugees are coming in from Eastern Europe, okay? And so those borders are open. So it is quite plausible to some extent that you would find maybe some refugees, you know, some terrorists maybe mixing in with the refugees and whatnot and coming in.
Well, that's what happened just right now in Turkey, and we saw that 8 people have been detained. They came in with refugees, and we also know that some of these people who might be involved in what happened in the terror attacks in Paris might have come in through the wave of refugees from Syria. So the vetting out process, like you said, hasn't been there. But there hasn't been a vetting out process that has been stated by the American government to ease the public's concerns.
Well, let me respond to that, and first by saying that I was just reading in the Guardian newspaper today, and the New York Times, as a matter of fact, also, that stated that many of these passports that you found on those bodies were fake passports, which has been an agenda by ISIS to prevent people from coming from being refugees and coming into other countries, all right? So you have that kind of dynamic working. But America has a far more stricter vetting process, okay, in place right now than those other countries do.
Right. And I think it's also important to remember that the UN Commission on Refugees said that more than half of the refugees that are being pushed for resettlement here in the U.S. are actually children, are actually under a certain age. And I think that's very important to keep in mind, because a lot of these kids are orphans who have nowhere to go.
Let's go back to Governor Chris Christie. He said he doesn't want anybody, even orphan children, because there's no one there to take care of them. Well, is this what we were founded on as a country?
No,
absolutely not. Or do we need to change our process, because there is this tenor, and there is a nervousness that's in the country right now, especially after the veiled threats by ISIS that they will attack Washington, D.C., and that there are sleeper cells that are here in America, and there are known hotbeds within this country, and we know those known hotbeds.
And you know what? And I think ISIS, we should all just be very cautious, because this is exactly what ISIS wants, right? They want
holy
this division.
War.
Well, they want this, exactly. They actually put out something in February after the Charlie Hebdo attack saying that they want to get rid of the gray zones, which are basically the middle point where people come together and have mutual understanding and mutual respect, and they want that eliminated. So this is exactly what they want, pitting people against one another and then recruiting from there and getting more people on their side. So
and also,
be very careful.
Yes, I'm sorry. And also, it plays into the whole narrative of what they want with respect to denying America its value systems. This is not what America is about, all right? Because if we give in to the terrorists, we are achieving their agenda by doing so. Mm-hmm. So we play into their fears. So I would ask the American people not to give in to the exacerbated fears mm-hmm. that have been produced by some political operatives who wish to further their own political goals, nor to give in to the fears that are pronounced by ISIS.
And we'll let that be the final answer. We thank you both for joining us, freelance journalists Nydia Khan and Abdul Mubarak Rowe from the Council on American Islamic Relations.
Thank you.
It is 7:20.